All right, ready to rock and roll?
I am.
All right, let's do it. So, hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of the Next Level Conversation podcast. I'm here with our fearless leader, President and CEO of HRC Realty, Chris Hendrix. So, just to give you an idea of who he is, obviously you all know who he is, but he is the guy that oversees all of us. So, HRC Realty, which consists of Coldwell Banker Professionals, Coldwell Banker ALM, Century 21 Town and Country, Century 21 SACMAR, and just over about 600 agents all together. So I can't thank you enough for being here and taking the time and giving agents a little more of an insight of who you are.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to be with you.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. So why don't we kind of start from, because you were an agent at one point.
Uh-huh.
And so what kind of took you from being an agent and selling to making that transition to being an owner?
I think there were a lot of things. I think it was a dream of mine to lead. I'm not necessarily even own, but to lead a big organization. I was a sports junkie growing up, and I realized pretty quickly I wasn't going to be able to extend my career in sports. And so the next thing for me became, I wanted to lead an organization. I wanted to make an impact to a lot of people. And so for me, this was a way to lead people, to help people. I always got more satisfaction out of probably being on a team than I did as an individual producer. And so I think that was the draw to it. And then just being able to impact people at a higher level. I think that's been my purpose.
Gotcha. And so was there like a certain event that happened to trigger that shift when you were selling, or is it just something you always wanted to do?
I think it's something I always wanted to do, during my time in college and even after I got out. Prior to being in real estate, I spent, about 15 years in corporate America running big organizations and that. And so it was kind of always a dream of mine. And so it was definitely on the to-do list as I went forward.
Gotcha. Okay. So, how long were you actually selling in the field? How many years?
I sold about, now I was managing at the exact same time I was selling. Okay. So funny story, I got out of corporate America and I jumped into being a part owner in a real estate company. I didn't even have my license yet. And I sure as heck didn't have my broker license.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a unique growth period for me, standing in front of great salespeople, great agents, and trying to add value. But I sold while I was managing, while I was leading that office for probably about 2 years.
Okay. All right. So you've been in the business, altogether, how long have you been in real estate?
15 years.
15 years. Okay. And so just taking that shift from agent to owner and manager to owner, what was your biggest challenges in going from agent to owner?
I think my biggest challenge was just patience. In building my team, our team, in trying to, establish and place and implement the systems and tools we needed to. And so I think there were a lot of things, but I wouldn't put any less than patience. Okay. Just patience as it built, taking baby steps, understanding it's incremental. You can't go right to, a top 300 brokerage in the country.
Sure.
The first week.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you balance, because patience is a huge aspect of business. How do you balance from, okay, I got to be patient to I may not be doing enough to get the results that I want. So how do you figure out which is which?
It's a challenging act, especially when you were in the short line when they handed out patience. But I think it's for me and I think for anybody who's chasing something bigger than where they're at, trying to get to a certain level. I think it's keeping in mind what the end is.
Yeah.
But each and every day, adding something, doing something, uncovering something that gets you a step in that direction. So it's celebrating those baby steps or those little victories as you go. I have a plaque on my bookshelf and it's called "The Journey is the Reward." And I really believe that the process is the reward. And most people, I think younger, they can't grasp that.
Yeah.
They want to go right from, they want to go right from their college degree right to the CEO seat. And they miss the joy of the journey. They miss that process. And so for me, that was a big step.
Yeah. And because I deal with it too, I deal with agents every day, and it's instant gratification, right? They want to be able to do something today and then see the result tomorrow, which that's just not the way it works.
No, we all want that, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, inevitably we all want it. It's just not real.
Yeah.
And if it is, it's not going to be long long lived.
Oh, for sure. And so you said you focus a lot on, the journey and the process to get you to where you are. So would you say that's kind of a driving force for you as opposed to the end result, just embracing that journey about, the successes, the failures throughout?
Yeah, it has to be for me. I mean, number one, I can't control the end.
Yeah.
But I can control today. I can control this minute. I can control tomorrow. And sometimes I can't even control that. But what I can control is my mindset, my preparation, my work ethic. And I think that served me well as I've gone forward because, you're taking it one bite at a time.
And you had mentioned work ethic because that's super important. Obviously, I've known you for a while. Is that something that you just always had, or is that something that was developed over time?
I think it's something. Number one, I love to work, and I know that in the society today, work isn't necessarily valued. It's not held in esteem, and so I love to work. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my 5 children. I love getting away. I love enjoying the fruits. But I love to work, and so if I take a minute and I try to think about where that came from, I mean, there's a couple different things early in my life that really made the difference to me. I remember when my grandfather grew up in the Great Depression, and he lost it all. And one of the things I still remember about him is he lost it all, and he paid back he owned a clothing store, and when it all went south and bellied up, and all his clients, who many of them were on credit, left, he paid personally. Back in the day when he didn't have to, he paid every single debtor off.
Wow.
And it took him years.
Yeah.
And they had to sacrifice. But I remember, and so that's a little bit about my grandfather, but my grandfather used to give me speeches about something called self-discipline. And I remember, like most of our kids, we hear that and it's like Charlie Brown's teacher, right?
Yeah.
It's going in one ear, out the other. But I remember him relating things like sacrifice for things you want. Practicing self-discipline with intentionality. And so I think I learned that early on. And then I think I got blessed with great parents. I know we all have great parents, but for me, my parents, we didn't come from big money.
Yeah.
And yet we always had enough. But I remember my parents growing up, everything I wanted. If I wanted a new pair of fresh Nikes for the basketball season, if I wanted something for sports, they never just paid for it. And I think, even with my children, it's like, oh, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
This and that. But what they would do is they would give me jobs around the house. I got an hourly wage. They should be in jail at this point for that hourly wage. But they would give me jobs around the house.
Yeah.
And then either one of two things happened. When I got done with the job, they either gave me that money and they made up the difference, or what they would do is take that money that they would have paid me, made me put it in the bank, and then they bought. And then they would buy whatever it was, a pair of shoes, a varsity jacket, whatever. And so it taught me the value of, working for what you want.
Yeah.
And so I was able to associate that early in my life. And so I was lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
I battle with that with my children, even today, and they're older. But I worry about our generation not being able to associate the beauty of hard work and getting what you want.
Yeah.
Through that. And so I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
For sure, because I can relate to that 100% because, you know my dad, and he's a roofer. So that's where hard work comes from. So if I wanted like a new baseball bat, new baseball cleats, stuff like that, he'd say, all right, we'll go grab that, bundle of shingles or the ice and water shield, carry it up for me on the weekend, and, we'll make the money. And that's how I did it. And so what do you think in today's society, what do you think caused us to get away from that?
I think the generations have changed over the years. I mean, number one, I think when I grew up, my mother didn't work. Now, she worked.
Sure.
But she didn't go to a place of business every day, and my father did. And so I think as we've gotten older, a lot of parents work, both parents work. And so their way of sometimes giving what maybe their mothers or parents gave to them is money.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's created a work ethic that, frankly, is awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think kids know how to work as much anymore. I don't think they respect work. And so their work ethic isn't at the same level that I think a lot of us grew up with.
Yeah, for sure. And if you wouldn't mind, just scoot this way a little bit to make
Sure.
sure you're in the frame.
Yep.
So how do we fix that? I mean, I know I'm asking a bunch of questions, but like, how would you go about fixing that?
Well, so that's hard to fix it as a society.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big issue. And, I think we have to fix it ourselves and internally. And so, I think it starts with, if we look at it internally, it starts with, what is our why? What is our purpose? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And I think if it starts there, a lot of times if our why is big enough, if our goal is big enough, we'll figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out what needs to be done, and we'll put the time in. And I think a lot of us don't take that time. We spend more time planning the weekend.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we spend more time planning our vacation than we do our lives or our careers or our business. And so I think it starts there, but it's tough. I think it starts with our children. But if you're at a certain point in your life and you don't have a work ethic and you don't have a toughness about you and you don't have those things, it is difficult. And so I think in that situation, I think you've got to go back and find out what your why is. I think it starts with our children, though, now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, leading by example, right? Not just telling, but actually acting out what it is you're asking them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And sharing with them the results of that.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us don't want to do that, but I think our children need to see that.
For sure. Oh, for sure. So going back to your first office, when did you actually purchase the first office?
So we bought the first one in 2007.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was that experience like?
Oh, it was great. But it was a lot of work.
Was there fear?
Yeah. And there's still fear today. It's a different kind of fear. But that same fear was there then. It's a fear of not letting others down, not letting the people who matter to you down, not letting the team down. And so, there's fear. I wake up every day with fear. Now it's different fear today, maybe than it was back when we bought our first office or bought our second office or our third office. But no question, I have it just like everybody else.
So how do you choose to overcome and confront that? Like when you get fear, what does that do? Like how do you handle that?
Yeah. So for me, it's two decisions, and I don't mean to simplify it, but first of all, decision number one is to eliminate failure as an option, and that's a mindset.
Yeah.
Because when you eliminate that as an option, then there is only one choice, right?
Right.
When it's an option, the first time things get tough, whether it be a marriage, a relationship, your business, a client, when failure is an option and it's an equal option, it's easier to quit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think back then I couldn't fail. And I couldn't fail. It wasn't an option. There were too many people counting on me. There were too many goals and dreams that needed to be accomplished. And so that was number one. The second thing is to use that fear. And I've always been able to use fear to better focus.
Yeah.
To channel that fear into a higher level of intensity, to channel that fear into a higher level of awareness. And so what I mean by that is, when failure isn't an option, when you're taking failure to turn it into an intensity, then what happens is you start becoming more aware and things start to present themselves. For example, if you want to be a better agent, and specifically you wanted to be a better listing agent, and you were channeling that, and then you start to become aware of other great listing agents and other great tactics, and the whole world becomes your library.
Oh, yeah.
And so for me, early on in that time, number one, I had to channel it. I had to make the decision, okay, Chris, pull up your pants.
Yeah.
Who cares if the market, within 6 months of you buying this company, 40% of the market drained?
Yeah.
Our average sales price went from, at that time, it was about $165, so $165,000. It went to $99,000. But you know what? You've got to failure wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
So very quickly we had to kind of level set it. We had to, channel that fear and that anxiety that all of us feel into, okay, we got to sell more units. Mm-hmm. We've got to figure out how to capitalize on this market. And I started to say about awareness. Then I had to start to recognize other brokers who were going through the same thing I was and figure out what I can take from them to bring into our organization. So,
oh, for sure. So you just heard it firsthand from this guy. I mean, he still experiences fear every day. And so it's not something that's unique or just selective to you. We all experience it. And the biggest takeaways is you got to essentially burn the boats, eliminate failure.
Yep.
Right. We got to figure it out and then use that fear as a driving motivation factor to really look, failure is not an option. Like you said, you don't want to let people down. And that's a huge point that a lot of agents miss. I love it. So yeah, going back to the first office, so you purchased it in 2007, right before the perfect market conditions hit. And then so you're looking around, you're figuring out, okay, what is this broker doing? What's this guy doing? What can I take and implement? Did you have any key pivotal mentors early on that helped you show you the way? Or did you kind of just keep your eyes open and pick up what you see other people doing?
So during those years, I wish I said I had one.
Yeah.
But I would beg, borrow, steal, interview, talk to, buy drinks, buy coffee, whatever it took, because at that point in time, it was, how do I get from A to B as fast as I can?
Yeah.
I didn't have time to just sit back and wait and see if the conditions I was facing would turn on their own. So I leveraged, and maybe that's a big word for, everybody to hear, is I leveraged everything I could leverage. So for example, I would leverage the brand.
Yeah.
And the resources with the brand. And so I would go to every conference. I would go to every event. And then I wouldn't just go to those events, but I had intentionality. So I would go find the tools, the people, the systems that could help us get from A to B. And then I would invest.
Yeah.
And I would spend some money. So if there was something we needed, whether it be technology, whether it be coaching, whether it be support, whether it be infrastructure, I would go take advantage of those things because all those would do is accelerate my success rate. If it would normally take 5 years, if I could implement what the best were doing, it might get me there in a year.
Yeah.
Or a year and a half. And so I think those were some of the things we did back then. I leveraged technology. As we grew, I knew that in multiple locations, we couldn't run it the same way as if we had one. So technology became a friend, not an irritant.
Yeah.
We leveraged systems and tools. And as we ramped up, we had to add all those things. And then obviously, last but not least, we had to add talent.
Oh, for sure.
Because I could not do it all myself. And I realized that the second we added a second office.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of is a good segue into the second office because you're figuring things out, you're investing, you're going about, and intentionality is a huge point too that I don't think a lot of agents are aware of. Intentionality, like you should have intentionality every single day about what it is you want to accomplish. But to your point, when we first started, if you don't have a why, or if you don't know why it is that you want to do, it's hard to be intentional about it.
Yeah, it's hard to be intentional. It's just hard to battle through adversity.
Oh, for sure.
Because, it's easier to quit.
Yeah.
If, you don't really not only have, but you're obsessed with what you're trying to accomplish. When you get hit in the mouth or you get faced with adversity or something happens, you lose a client that you knew you should have had, or you lose a deal that you knew you should have had, how do you battle through that adversity? How do you get past it? And it's really, okay, that's tough. I don't like it, but I know what I'm trying to accomplish big picture. And so this is a speed bump. It's not a wall.
Right.
It's a speed bump with it. And I think so many people quit at that moment. Everybody wants to be successful, right? You do, I do. All of our agents want to be successful, but do they have to be successful? And I think that's a point that, I don't think we talk about enough.
No, for sure. And like Mike Tyson said, you don't really know who you are until you get punched in the face, right? And see how you react because everybody experiences adversity and failure and everything else. So how do you how did you build such a strong ironclad mindset to help you overcome everything that you have so far?
I think, a lot of it's through failure. It just is. And, Michael Jordan, he's got that famous quote and it goes something like, I succeed because I fail. And he talks about how many game-winning shots he missed.
Yeah.
And it's because he's not afraid to take that shot. Well, I'm no Michael Jordan, no question. But I think you build that through failure. I think you build it through repetition. I think in that failure does two things. We always hear that that's where our greatest growth comes from. And I believe that.
Yeah, for sure.
I believe that, knock down 7, get up 8, right?
Yep.
But I think the other thing that happens in failure, in addition to the growth, is you don't ever want to go there again.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so you remember that and you realize that and you don't want to make that mistake again. And so for me, a lot of it was failure. It was picking myself up, getting back in the game, and we had failure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we had over the years, let's say 16 to 17 mergers, acquisitions that were all part of our growth, I bet you we had 16 to 17 that coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than everybody on this call realizes.
Yep.
And so, but learning from it, picking yourself up, getting back in the game, realizing that, hey, everybody goes through adversity. This is just part of the process.
So what advice or what would you say to an agent or anyone else out there that is afraid to embark on new things because of the fear of failure, meaning they don't want to do it because they're afraid they're going to fail?
I think number one, get over it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Get over it. You're not, we're not that important.
Yeah.
Well, whether it be, posting video.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Or, making calls, trying new scripts. I mean, is number one, just realize we're not that important. I mean, we think, oh my gosh, if I post this video, there's going to be, 4.2 million followers and we're not that important.
Yeah.
And so, one is just realize that, just do it. And then, it gets easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I really believe that. I believe that, every time you push through something like that, it gets a little bit easier. You make it a little bit more your own. You tweak it and so on and so forth. So I just, the other adage that I would just give people is, what's the worst thing that can happen? You make a call, and let's even say the FSBO, crow hops and power slams the phone. So what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's on them. I mean, they're not going to get your level of service. They're not going to get your professionalism. Move on to the next one.
100%. I agree totally. And so going back to 2007, you bought your first office. So how did you know, it was time to acquire another one? Like, was there something that happened, or did you just always in that growth mindset and deciding ready to go?
I think there's a couple things. I mean, obviously always, even today, we're in a growth mindset. But I think, me, I'm a very spiritual guy. I think prayer and putting faith in God and trusting in God. There were many deals that we worked on that got to that point, in a high negotiation point, and leaving it in God's hands. But I think the other thing for us is, it was that daily growth mindset. And those opportunities presented itself from relationships, from being in that growth mindset, that, you had to capitalize. I mean, there was 1 year. So we did about a deal every other year for, it seemed like forever, but it was probably like 5 or 6 years. And then I think it was 2014, we did 3 deals in the same year. Kind of like getting 3 new listings in the same week, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, there is a side of us, we're only human, that said, you know what, could we pause this deal and do this deal next year and the next deal after, right? Yep. Everybody can relate to what I'm talking about. And yet we had to rise to the occasion. And so having that growth mindset, putting it in God's hands, and then capitalizing on those opportunities when they come, taking action. And so I think those 3 things really made a difference.
So when you have, now we got a couple offices, everything's going good, you're battling through adversity, battling through the market, you're taking more listings. Was there ever a point to where you just felt, all right, I made a pretty good business, I got a couple offices, I'm comfortable, I'm content, I don't got to keep going? Did that ever happen?
Never.
Why?
I think the mindset I've always had, even when we had one office with about 13, 14 agents, was, you know what? I'm seeing these other companies out there. I'm seeing these big monstrosity companies, And you know what? We put our pants on the same way they do. And yes, those are impressive people, whether I met them on, international business conferences or I was on broker councils with them or whatever. We put our pants on the exact same way they do. And so I don't know if we can get to their level, but
I think we can.
We're going to die trying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's really been my attitude. And so when you have that attitude of growth and you have that attitude of, hey, I don't know if I can get there, but I'm going to do everything. Then what happens is every day, again, going back to that quote, and I think the great Kobe Bryant used this quote, is then the world is your library. And so every day when you're dealing with like-minded people or like-minded successful leaders of companies, you start to notice the things they're doing.
Yeah.
Inside and outside of our restaurant. I mean, I drive my family crazy, but we'll be in northern Michigan and I'll go into a restaurant and they'll have some cool slang on their wall for recruiting. And I'm like, I'm snapping pictures. I look like one of those tourists, right? But it's that mindset of, every day trying to be the best version of ourselves, not knowing if we can get to that level, but every day getting a little bit better.
Yeah. Somehow,
some way. And I think then you look up pretty soon and, you're closer than you think.
Yeah. And it sounds like a recurring theme, but it sounds like it all stems from up here, right? Mindset, the mentality, followed by the incredible amount of action.
Yeah. I saw a seminar. I was blessed. I was about 23 years old, and it was Tony Robbins, and it was a seminar on, what makes the most successful people, what's the difference? And he's trained and coached some of the most successful CEOs and business titans in the world. And he made this quote, and it stuck with me all these years, and he said, taking action. And so a lot of us can hear a great idea. We can hear a great script, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We can hear a great strategy, but then we're paralyzed by fear or perfection. And so I think one of the things that is so critical as an agent, but it was certainly critical for us, is, listen, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to implement things, you're going to purchase things, and they may not work out. But if you're taking action, you're going to see results much faster than the guy or the gal who's waiting till all the stars align and everything's perfect before they pick up the phone and make a phone call, right?
Oh, yeah, it's never going to be perfect, right? So that's never going to happen. So action, implementation, that's a huge fail point that I think a lot of people, because again, you can hear, yeah, that sounds great. Oh my God, that sounds great. The night before, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get up and attack the day. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. The morning comes and then nothing.
Exactly.
No follow through.
Exactly.
So I agree. That's a huge point that we need to be focusing on. So you've been going, all right, last couple of years, you're acquiring an office, then 1 year you hit 3, but then, here comes the mother load and you acquire C21 and all these other brands. So what happened? Because obviously you're keeping your eyes open for opportunities. That opportunity came and you pulled the trigger on it. So kind of walk us through that.
So, I think flashback to 2019. So you look at 2007 to 2019, and I think we were at 12 offices. We had a very solid company, Chairman Circle company within the Coldwell Banker organization. But we just felt like there was more.
Yeah.
And there were some markets very specifically in Metro Detroit that we wanted to get in, that we could not get in because they were blocked out by other CBs. And so we had some great relationships that we had cultivated for years. One was with Andy Sackmar and the other one was with John Kirsten. And so those opportunities presented themselves again. If I could look back now, I might have said, you know what, let's do these right after COVID. Let's do these right after the pandemic. Do we need to do them both in the same year? But again, you put your faith in God, the opportunities present themselves, you take action. And so we were able to put both of those deals. And so essentially in the course of about 6 months, we doubled the size of the company and got into some markets we were never in, and I'm not so sure we could have ever got in.
Yeah.
So
like the one we're sitting in right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, much like the initial office that we bought back in 2007. So we jump into this, we're excited. We got big goals, big dreams. Everybody on this call is probably flashing forward and going, wait a minute, that was the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And boom, we're in COVID.
Yep.
And I think that's a perfect example of, kind of our company, in that, when you get hit with lemons, you figure out how to make lemonade. When you get hit with adversity, when failure is not an option, then the first decision is, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? There is no chapter in the in the management course I took in college for this, and you figure it out. You figure it out. You start to leverage, best practices because there's other people in the planet going through what I'm going through, but you've got to reach out. And so, we had to do a lot of things we'd never done before. We had to leverage technology like we'd never leveraged it. We had to leverage best practices. We had to figure out how, I don't know if I'm sure you remember, we did a listing boot camp virtually.
Yep.
And you just figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think what drives you through that is yes, fear drives you, but what also drives you is, not even accepting for 1 second that you're going to let others down.
I totally forgot about that. That was right before COVID hit too. So it would have been super easy to kind of retract and say, hey, let's put this deal on hold. Let's wait to see what happens. But no, your style is pedal to the metal. Let's go. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you just got to figure out how to make, you got to figure out how to make wine out of water.
Yeah.
You have to improvise. The best athletes in the world, the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes, they figure it out. And when all the chips are on the table, you figure it out.
Yeah. And it's not, so that's a great story because, some people may look at very successful people and think, oh my God, they had this like perfect path and everything just lined up perfectly and they had no problems. But no, circumstances are never going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to line up perfectly. You have to tread through the mud just like everybody else.
You have to. And, it's a lot like a blister. You have to go through that pain, that blister surfaces itself, and then pretty soon it starts to callus over, right? You just have to. And by the way, there's probably some newer, I would guess, agents watching this video,
Sure.
and they haven't been through that. And, as you go through it the first time, you start to develop a little air.
Yeah.
You start to develop a little swagger where the next time you get hit with it, it's not, oh my gosh, and run out the street screaming Chicken Little. It's, I've been through this. I don't like it, but I've been through this. I just need to grind.
And you're prepared.
And you get back to your basics, and you leverage the resources around you that have been through it before. Like whether it's a coach, or it's a seasoned realtor or somebody who's been through it, you leverage that to help you get through. But you just grind.
Yeah.
And I think that thing with the perseverance is it's every day.
Every day.
You cannot show up 2 days a week and call that grinding. It's every day. It's consistency. It's showing up.
Yeah.
It's every single day. There's a ton of people that want to be successful, but there's not a lot that must be successful. And the ones who must, it's just not an option.
Well, everyone loves the, glorified end point of success, but they don't want to do everything up to that point. So they just, they're not into it. And to that point, let me know if you agree with me on this, because I think failure is necessary because one, it's information. So that way, if we're ever hit with another pandemic or something and you're acquiring offices, okay, I'm prepared. I got this. But it helps you build self-confidence, your stress tolerance, your capacity for stress, and everything else. So it's essentially necessary. It's a byproduct of success. You need it.
Absolutely. It's a necessary step in growth. It's one I try to parlay onto my children.
Yeah.
And my nieces and nephews. But it's also one that, as parents, I think nowadays we try to save our kids from that.
Protect them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're cheating them because they're not building that. Because it's not if adversity or tragedy is going to hit their lives, it's when.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we take that away from them and we take it away from ourselves because we don't like it. And yet it is part of it.
Oh yeah, because one of the first things I do with a coaching client that comes on board, I say, all right, go call for sale by owners, go get hit in the face for a week, because I need you to experience that first, so that way you can build that up and you can come back and now we can talk about it. Because if you've never done it, you're never going to get over that fear of doing it. Like we did Hard Knocks. The look on everyone's face when we said, okay, we're 15 minutes in, now go pick up the phone and start calling people. I mean, that was people like they were confronted with their biggest fear ever, and they had no choice but to get over it in that moment, and they did.
Totally. And you know, I still remember the look on them, and there was great growth. But when they came back in and they had made calls,
Oh, they were juiced.
and nobody got, nobody got their license revoked, right?
Yeah.
Nobody got, personally. It was almost like everybody walked in the room and said, "I got this." That was no big deal.
Yeah.
They hated you when you made them do it.
Yeah.
And then they walked back in and said, "You know what? That's not as big a deal as I thought. The fear I had of doing it wasn't that bad." And there's an example of that growth where now they're stronger for it.
Yeah.
And now the next time, same thing with us. We don't ever want COVID again, do we?
No.
But if it did come because of the pain we went through, we would be prepared for the next time. And I think that's where growth happens.
Because we even have some agents who attended that, and now they have built out call sessions in their offices, which they never would have done prior to that. So that's a huge point too. So going back, all right, 2007, you acquire C21. Now we're building up. When you first started with your first office, did you envision all this? Is this like something that was part of the plan?
I always dreamed it. And I always, I remember one conference out in San Francisco I went to, and we were going to a charity function and we're riding in like a bus to get there. And some guy from Arkansas was telling me about how he just acquired his 4th office all around Arkansas. And I remember I had our initial office. I remember thinking, man, if we could ever get there. And so I always dreamed it, Alex. I always wanted it. I'm not sure I ever visualized 18.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I definitely visualized more. But I also didn't allow that to take away from today, because I still, even if I wanted 2 offices or 3 offices, I had a responsibility to the agents in the building, our partners, our vendors, to show up every day and grind.
Yeah.
So it was like I had these 2 muscles, right? I had the today that I had to show up, I had to grind, I had to perform, I had to get results. But then there was this other muscle, which I was constantly looking for ways to get to the next level. And then that's when those opportunities present themselves. And I think we as agents go through that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's the end game. I want to be a Kyle Matta. I want to be a Dawn Hendrix, a Ginny Yun, a Madhvi Kabeli, a Karina Ball. I want to be at that level, and I'm here today. So I think wanting to get to that level and noticing what those people are doing and the habits and the clues they're leaving is critical. But then it's back to today. I got to get a listing today.
Yep.
I need to get a buyer today. I need to hold an open house this weekend. And so for us, I think that was part of my journey.
Oh, yeah. And part of the book that I'm reading that you gave me, which is awesome, by the way, in there's a passage about balance and how every single day you have a choice to either take one step closer to where you want to be, or you're taking one step further away. And, that end goal is accumulation of every single everyday decisions you make throughout the day. It's not one big decision. It's hundreds of decisions you choose to make throughout the day, week over week, month over month.
Yeah. And I think the football coach up at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, makes this quote as, let's just get a little better today than we were yesterday. Yeah. And a little better tomorrow than we were today. And that sounds so cliche, right? And for you Spartan fans out there, I apologize. Yeah. But it is so powerful. If every one of us, every one of us might not be able to run a marathon today, but we can run 100 yards. Yeah. And if we run 100 yards today and then run 125 tomorrow and 150, then pretty soon you look up at that incremental growth, and it's monumental.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of, in some ways, the history of our company. I mean, we started with one, and it was just one step at a time. Yeah. And I think that relates to what we do, too.
Absolutely, because you can't go from one office to 18 offices overnight. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It's incremental. It's accumulation. It's a snowball effect, right? Yes. What you do today will lead to tomorrow, which will lead to next week, which will lead to next month. And then before you know it, you're miles ahead of where you started.
100%.
I like it. So we've touched on a lot, but I love to get an insight as to like, what's it like to run 18 offices? What's it like in the day of Chris? I see you a couple days a week and you're always super busy, but like, what's it like?
It's wonderful. And I think what makes it wonderful for me is a couple things. I mean, number one, the type of people we have inside our company. Yeah. And I think we've been very meticulous to add growth orientated people within our company. Even our front desk people are trying to get better every day in each one of our offices. And they're a lot of times the glue that hold us together, the leadership throughout the company, our agent services and agent development teams, our back office. And so it's wonderful because I get to work every day with what I think, I'm biased, is the best organization that I know of. But it's fast paced. Some days are better than others, right? We all go through that same thing. But I will tell you the one thing that's common that I think every one of our agents, and I know you deal with, is, there's good days, there's bad days, there's great days, there's look forward to tomorrow days.
Yeah.
But each day is exhilarating for me because it's an opportunity to get better. It's an opportunity to get better. I mean, and it could be something simple like we've got an event coming up and we want to make it our best event ever. Or we've got a training or development course and we're trying to make it at our best ever, like Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
The feedback I've gotten, that was one of our best ever. And so every day it's an opportunity to get better. And to me, that's what drives me.
So is there something that you do, like a daily routine that helps you kickstart your day or keeps you in line or keeps you balanced? Is there something you read, or is it just something that you do on a routinely basis?
I think there's a lot of things I try to do. I mean, I'm as flawed as the next guy, so I got to do a lot of things. I mean, prayer is part of my everyday routine. Exercise is part of my everyday routine, not because I'm trying to get into a 31-inch pair of pants.
I see you walk around here. You're looking pretty jacked. So
yeah. But it's me getting my mind right.
Yeah.
And so exercise, prayer, eating right, focusing right, showing up with gratitude, right? Yep. Having a to-do list, having a purposeful list, being a servant leader. I mean, those are the things that I think to give myself a chance to have a great day, great week, great month, I have to work at, because that doesn't come natural. I mean, I see some people, they just show up and, I want to wipe the smile off their face, Alex. They're so upbeat and positive. Me, I have to work at it.
Yeah.
But I think those things I just mentioned really stand up for me.
Yeah. And the exercise, eating right, that's super, super important. So all of you that are out there listening that haven't gotten into that, we strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to do so, because it will change your outlook and your everyday life for sure.
Amen.
So we've talked about a lot of stuff about essential things to become successful in business, but if you had to narrow it down to a couple points, what would those be?
There's a couple things. There's the things that I think everybody knows on this call, but sometimes I think consistency is critical. I think, you can't be successful doing anything in life part-time.
Yeah.
You got to show up every day. You got to have the same energy level, the same tenacity. I think that's critical, consistency every day. And we're in the sales business, right?
Yep.
So I think sales is nothing but consistency. It's a numbers game. It's putting yourself in the right situation. Enough preparation is critical. Mm-hmm. I mean, even this interview that I'm chatting with you at, I have some notes here, reminders for me. I mean, it's just, and some people may think, well, Gal, why do you do that for a listing presentation? Why do you do that for a call out session? Why do you do it? It's because it's too important to fail, not to fail.
Yeah.
Why wing it? It's just way too important. So consistency, preparation, self-discipline are all things that stick in my mind.
Okay.
Self-discipline is every activity, every day in every area of your life. It's not taking a play off. It's not taking a date night off. It's not taking Sunday mass off. It's not taking a workout off. It's not taking a call out. It's just, if it's important, then you can't afford to. And so self-discipline's a big thing. But I would say the single biggest thing that I think everything else gets figured out is commitment. And what are you committed to? And what is it that you passionate about? And you've got to be, a sexy term nowadays is called all in. But I think, being committed to something and being focused on being the best version of yourself in whatever it is. That could be your relationship with your children, right?
Yeah.
That could be a relationship with a spouse or significant other. That could be your job. I hope it's their job, Alex. But then, again, I hate to keep using that quote, but when you're committed, when you're all in, then what happens is the world and everything around you becomes your library.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it. When you're highly committed to something, and it's 2 degrees in February, when you're committed to it, you get yourself out of bed, you prepare, you're consistent. When you're not committed to something, when it's just, it'd be nice to have, but you're not committed to it, then you figure out a way to make excuses and not do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that justifies you not doing it, right? Everyone has excuses.
That's exactly right.
And so this is something that I struggle or battle with. I know a lot of people do. You know, you're busy all the time. You're running around. You got stuff going on. So how do you remain present in all the things that you're doing? Like if you're in business, okay, but if you're with the family, how do you be present in the moment when you got so much stuff going on?
You know, that doesn't come natural. And, you know, so full transparency, that's something that has been a lifelong, what's the word for it? A lifelong effort for me. I think present for me starts with intentionality. You know, these doggone phones, where you can access anything, that takes away from things. And so I have to make a concerted effort, whatever it is I'm doing, especially when you're juggling a lot of balls and your mind's going 100 miles an hour, to concentrate. So number one, it's intentionality.
Okay.
But the reason it's intentional and the reason I'm committed to it is because it's important to me.
Right.
It's important to my family. It's important to our company. It's important to, you know, our customers. And so it starts with intentionality, and then it starts with putting simple activities in place to remind you. So like one of the things, this is goofy, I'm letting them into all my weird secrets, but one of the things is on my phone, you can set a timer where all of your apps turn off on your phone at a certain time. So I'm a sports junkie. I'm always trying to figure out, okay, who's Michigan recruiting for football?
Yeah.
I'm always checking my email. Oh, I better check Fox News, or I better check it, you know. So it's constant. And so I have an app on my phone. I think it's set in under timers, under settings. Listen, I'm not training you how to use your iPhone, but you can set it where your phone actually shuts down. Huh. And so I have to do that at 7:30 every night. Otherwise, I'll be going right to the bitter end with it. I think the other thing is you know, I had a manager early in my career who talked to me about this thing called one moment in time. And when someone comes to you and needs something, is push everything off to the side and just concentrate. Taking notes helps me. But I think it is something that I've had to work at and I've had to work out forever. And it starts with intentionality.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you because I know a lot of people, including myself, are struggling with it. So it's intentionality. That's a great point. And so we talked about what are the most essential things to succeed. What do you think are the main points that causes people to fail in business?
I think excuses. And I know that sounds harsh, but I want to let it process for a second. Is excuses. And so you think about a baseball pitcher, and the plate is, I know you're a baseball guy, but it's 17 inches wide, right?
Yep.
And so if you have a great pitcher with a great arm, with a great attitude, with a live fastball, but he can't throw the ball over a 17-inch plate, do they say, Alex, you tried hard. I know it was 2.5 inches outside the plate. We're going to call that one a strike.
Yeah.
And do they widen the plate?
No.
They don't. And so I think what happens with us in life, and I do think it started years ago where both parents were working and they carried some internal guilt about working. And so they wanted a second and a third and a fourth place trophy, and they never wanted their kids to stumble. And listen, that's what we all do as parents. But I think we started to accept excuses and accepting excuses where growth opportunities were there, meaning when adversity hits.
Yeah.
When struggles hit, is we start making an excuse. And so I think that's huge, of just eliminating excuses early on with our company. I mean, I'm no different than anybody. Early on when we bought our first office and we had the real estate and stock market crash.
Yeah.
It would have been easy. I mean, many of my peers just said, nah, there's no hope. I'm getting out now, whatever. And we took those next 10 years, and I don't mean to make it sound like it was something dramatic, because it was very logical. We were able to experience our greatest growth as a company over those next 5 to 10 years, because there were many brokers, not all, but there were a lot of brokers who were bailing. And so for us, that adversity, not allowing those excuses, which are real,
of course,
to stop us. I think that, and then, again, not willing to put the work in. I think there's a lot of people that want the success, want the money, want the rewards, but aren't willing to work.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that most times really sabotage people's career.
Oh, for sure. And I think pretty much everything you talked about, whether it's success or failure, it's all self-imposed. It's all a decision you make yourself. It's not an external factor. It's you.
Yep, 100%.
So I know we touched on, it's obvious and it exudes from you. You're a servant leader. I mean, that's just who you are. And you've kind of touched on that. But if you had to narrow it down to a couple points, what do you think is your biggest driving force behind the business?
For me personally?
You personally.
I think it's it's our agents. It's wanting to be our agents. I'm so eternally grateful for all of them. And I mean that because they make us better.
Yep.
They challenge us. It's not wanting to let them down. And so that is at this point in my career, that is probably the single biggest driving force is wanting to be the best version we can be as a company in every way, to not let them down, to have a company that they're proud of in every way, not just in tools, technology, platforms, services, support, but even with how we handle our community involvement.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest driving force for me today.
Okay.
Is really them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it shows because we're always tweaking things, we're always growing, we're always trying to get better. No matter what department you're talking about, every single person on the staff is trying to do everything we can to make it better for the agents. So I think that kind of shows by example. So now looking at where we're at now, where do you see HRC? Where are we going? What's next?
We need to continue to grow. And growth can come in a lot of different fashions. Growth doesn't have to be more physical facilities.
Yeah.
In fact, I like the number that we have today. I like our footprint. I like our locations. It's growing those offices. It's adding new talent to those offices. It's helping our existing agents get to a level maybe they didn't think they could get to through coaching, through training, through support, through events. And so getting stronger. You never know. It's not a matter of when the next storm's coming or if the next storm's coming. It's just a matter of when. Yeah. So trying to make us stronger, trying to make us more stable in whatever that is. Getting better. I think I just want us to get better. And it doesn't have to be monumental steps, but just incrementally getting better each day, improving something that's a blind spot for us, adding talent where we need to add talent. And so I think that's something that we've been good at, but we still got to get better. And then, maybe the last thing that I would bring up is we need to develop the leaders of the future. And so as you have massive growth, you have to add people, talent, to support that growth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we went from one office to two and then 2 to 3. You have to add talent to support that growth and then to help you get to the next level. And so, we're at a point where we've done a great job, I think, the last 6, 12, 18 months, adding a lot of new managers.
Yeah.
We need to continue that. And we need to continue to add new coaches. We need to continue adding new marketing personnel. And we've done a pretty good job with that, but that's where I see us the next year.
So, yeah, because, all in all, we're a massive company. We got a ton of stuff going on. Do you see, like, some sort of finality point for you to where you're like, okay, this is where I want to go, and once I hit that, then we're good? Or is it just, no, we're continuing to grow?
Yeah, I think I'm on a journey. I don't ever see this finality. Early on, I would have, partners or business acquaintances would say, okay, you got 3.
Yeah.
And I would say, yeah, but there's this other one we're talking to or this other one. And they would look at me like, are you nuts?
Yeah.
Are you never satisfied?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily answer them like this, but I'd be thinking, no. Because, we only get one run around at this thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm on this journey to see just how good, Alex, we can be.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more that can be done to make us the best possible organization. Now, I don't know if we'll get there. There's some powerhouse brokerages in this country. I think we're the 295th largest brokerage in the country. But there's a lot of companies doing a lot of great stuff. And so I don't know if we can get to that level, but to me, that's the charge. That's the journey. And so I don't think I will ever wake up one morning and go, And maybe there's a little bit of weirdness in that, but it's also, it's the competitiveness in me of wanting us to get to, I mean, I look at your department.
Yeah.
And it's grown from you and I having a conversation a few years back to now you've added group coaching that's now just part of our curriculum.
Yeah.
You've added a different coach or an additional coach. You're looking at more coaches. And I think to me, that's a beautiful thing to see as we go forward. So
yeah, I'll never forget because I came to you with a yellow pad ripped off and a couple of scratch notes, and he's looking at me. He's like, "I like the idea, but I can see it in his eyes. Like, I don't know." And that was about 3-4 years ago. And now we've got over 20 agents in the individual program, and we closed over $64 million last year. So we're rolling.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And I know you're a little bit like me. And
Yes.
okay, that's good.
Not good enough. We can do better.
No, and I know we can. I know there's more agents on our roster that could benefit from it, whether it be group or personalized one-on-one. I know and so there's a whole different level. And so that's kind of my philosophy is, again, I don't know where we can get with this thing, but we're going to give it everything we got.
It's an obsession.
It is. It really, really is.
Mm-hmm. And so given that too, this is something that I struggle with, and I know a lot of other people struggle with as well. When you're obsessed with something or when you're so committed to growing, do you find yourself not celebrating the successes you experience throughout because you're so busy looking ahead to the next thing, or do you able to be present and celebrate the successes you do have?
So I probably don't celebrate them as long as some people, but I celebrate them.
Okay.
And it could be a quiet moment. It could be, it could be a drink with somebody. It could be a dinner with a team member. It could be, I celebrate them, and you have to celebrate them. You have to, you have to enjoy those steps. You have to, otherwise, why are you doing it? Right. And some of the enjoyment is sharing it with others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so, no, I do. I probably don't do it as long as, maybe I should at times because I'm so excited about the next step. That's great, Alex, that you added your second coach this year, but how about the third?
Yeah.
Because I'm just so passionate about getting whoever it is to where they can be and want to be, that I don't as much as I probably should.
Yeah. I think we're all working on that. So all right, wrapping up with you.
Yeah.
Let's just say I'm a new agent, I'm an experienced agent, I'm a top producing agent. Why should an agent come work here?
Yeah, so you just dropped a couple things on me: a new agent, an experienced agent, a top producer, and I'll try to answer it in a couple different things. I mean, number one, I would say that, if this were a role play, I would say, you know what, we're not for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that with a swagger or chippiness, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. We're not for everyone, but if somebody wants to be the absolute best version of themselves, they want to be as good as they can be, they really aspire for that, then we are the only place for them. And I think that comes with a couple things. It's just my firm belief that nobody has better support. Mm-hmm. Nobody has better development opportunities that are spliced and cut at every level of our organization. If you're a top producer and you're doing $10 million a year and you want to get to 20, if you're a $1 million agent and you want to get to 3, or if you're just getting started and you're trying to get to say 8 to 10 deals a year, I think the development opportunities, the technology platforms we have, and support. It's one thing to have a lot of technology, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It's a whole different thing to have somebody on payroll that you can call, like Bob DeBoer, and he'll come out and actually set it up for you so that it becomes efficient. So I think all those things, the support we have, the partnership, how we look at it, the development opportunities in technology. But then I think from a very simple thing is, I think we can either help you get from where you're at right now to the next level with this, or if you're just looking to stay where you're at, but do it a lot more efficiently, have a lot more balance, then I think we can absolutely help you get to both spots.
I like it. So what about an agent who's doing 10 million and said, hey, I'm happy with where I'm at, things are going good, why should I change?
If it's an agent that's doing 10 million a year and they're happy and their broker's exceeding their expectations and the tools and technology and development are there, and the career upward mobility and the development and, all the things our brand brings to the table, if they're getting all that, then you probably shouldn't come.
Yeah.
However, I know all the brokers out there. I know all the self-service companies. I know all the self-service companies. All the self-service companies do, and the cloud-based companies, the only person they serve is themselves. And in fact, I know we talk a lot of times about their caps and different things like that. Their caps are too high.
Well, yeah, you're not getting anything.
For what they get, they should be ashamed,
Yeah.
and their cap should probably be half. And so, but that $10 million agent, I think the thing I would talk to them about is, number one, are you happy with where you're at income-wise? And if the answer is yes, then we can show you how to achieve that level of production much more efficiently.
Yeah.
We can help you maintain that level of production much more efficiently and provide you and your family more balance and things by automating the practices. If you want to get from 10 to 20, then we're absolutely the right place as well, because again, with our support, our tools, our technology, and our development opportunities, we can help you get to that next level faster than you would on your own. And that's what I think is we can do things for you that you can't do for yourself at a fraction of the cost in a much more efficient manner.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen it. I know agents that are at different companies that are doing, 10, 15, 20 million, but they're not quite happy with what they're doing it or how they're doing it. And so I've had agents I've worked with personally that have gone from 6 to 22 and, all those upper producers, but there's balance because of the systems, the support, the opportunities that we have here to implement. So yeah, you can be doing $10 million in production, but if you're not happy with the way you're doing it, then what's the point? There's no balance.
Absolutely. And it could be as simple as you're doing, helping you automate your business, providing transaction services, providing coaching, freeing your time up to do the things you do best so that your other time can be spent with your family.
Or the closing department.
Or our closing department, or the marketing department, or automating your marketing and technology. And so these are things that, you and I both know from experience that our agents enjoy, and it helps them get from one level to the next, or just helps them do it the level of business that they're doing anyways easier.
Yep. So believe it or not, it's been over an hour. So time has flown. Is there anything else you wanted to send out to everyone that's going to be watching?
No, just, thanks for the time. I really enjoyed spending the time with you, and, look forward to seeing things down the road.
Yeah, thank you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. He's a super, super busy guy. So for him to take an hour to sit down and talk to all of us, I really, really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoy this. This is episode 2. Please we'll be on the lookout for YouTube is where I'm going to post it. I'm going to be posting some clips on the Facebook and Instagram page as well. And if you like it, give us a like, give us a comment, and we want to hear your feedback. So thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here, Chris.
My pleasure. See you guys.